today to have Dr Chris Cresswell. Chris is from Whanganui. He's travelled a long way. He was there exercising his democratic right, joining thousands of Kiwis protesting against this odious, shambolic corporate deal that the national government signed away in us. Basically a symbolic signing yesterday. The issue is this agreement, this trade agreement, has to be ratified. So that's why we put this on today. We put this on, Unions Northland and Citizens Resistance, so that the public have an opportunity, and we thank the public for coming along today, so they find out about the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Now, being a doctor, I would imagine, well, it's not rocket science, Chris will have major concerns around the issues around multinational corporations honing in on New Zealand and our very good Farm Act model that we've got. So I'd like to a warm welcome for Dr Chris Cresswell. Thanks.
Kia ora koutou. It's great to be here. Thank you very much for the welcome. Thank you to Unions Northland and to Citizens Resistance. And it's great to see some good citizens here resisting. Yeah, awesome. Really cool. Well done you lot. Good on you for coming out in the rain. Yeah, it's a big-hearted thing to do. And thank you for giving us your support. It was a great march yesterday, and just commend everyone who was there and commend the police for how mature everyone was. And we've seen a few little things that didn't go so well in the media, but overall I thought it was stunning. I thought it was really mature how we all behaved and how the police responded. I thought that was really heartening for the future of democracy in New Zealand. I think that's something we can all be really proud of. I think the TPPA is such a big issue that it overwhelms a lot of us. There is just so much information about it. There's 6,000 pages of text. The chance of any of us getting our head around it in a hurry is really hard. I'm very thankful for people like Jane Kelsey who have been able to distill it for us and make it understandable. And the other legal experts that are looking at the different parts of it. It is so important for us. I think a key thing for all of us, those that are already on board, is to get those key messages that we can give to other people. And supporting what the Green Lady said about the ISDSs is a really important thing that people can comprehend really easily, really quickly. So again, that good example of Philip Morris versus the Australian government. Another good example is the Keystone XL pipeline in the United States. Big pipeline bringing oil from Canada down to the States. US says no good, not good for the environment, we're going to can it. Now they're getting sued for $15 billion US. So imagine that being done to New Zealand. Imagine just those, even the legal cost of resisting those things could bankrupt New Zealand overnight. And all of a sudden, our healthcare, our environment, our workers' rights are being controlled by those overseas companies. And that's not the country that I want my grandchildren to grow up in. Alby mentioned Farm Act. Farm Act is a miracle. It has kept the cost of New Zealand healthcare to a minimum for the last many, many years. The government says that it wouldn't be under threat. Of course it's going to be under threat. The multinational companies are going to be able to come in and challenge every decision that Farm Act makes. The legal costs in that would just disable Farm Act instantly. Then there's the longer patents on biologicals and medicines. That would make sure that we're paying top dollar for all our drugs for the rest of our future. And for the Joe average Kiwi, it's going to cost them a lot more money, it's going to cost the government a lot more money. And what are we getting in return? Very, very little. It's not worth it for us. And another thing we need to do is give people hope. Give people the message that we can change this, that we can turn this around, that we've got 2 years, in an election to sort this out. And for all the politicians here, we need to be hearing that the politicians are going to be working together to stop the law changes that are required to make the TPPA happen. It is a crucial message that Kiwis need to hear, that there is hope, that the opposition can work together on this. We need to encourage people to join unions. I got arrested last year in a TPPA protest. The union got my ass out of the swing. Okay, awesome. Really, really important that the unions, we support the unions and we get the unions strong, and we encourage other people to get behind the unions. We need to encourage people to join political parties, okay? We're an apathetic bunch. Some of us distrust our politicians. We need to change that. We need to show people that politics is important to average Kiwis and that they can make a difference. Get people enrolled, get them in there. Tell them that they can meet like-minded people in there and get going on fantastic projects. They can get them going into these project sections. They can get them into positive things, education nights, movie nights, all that sort of thing that actually builds community, supporting the community. Give people hope. We've got to give people the message that little things that they can do can make a big difference to our world. Buying local, shopping local, banking local, all those little things, divesting from the fossil fuel companies. Most of us have a KiwiSaver account. Most of us don't know where that money's being invested. We can go to the socially responsible funds. Little things that the average Kiwi can do. Really important messages. Okay? I know I'm preaching to the converted, but we just got to keep on saying it, eh? Keep on telling each other, keep on reminding each other, keep on just saying, right, go out there and spread the word. We can do this. We can create the more beautiful world our hearts know is possible. Okay? We can do it. We can do it together. We can create the sort of world we want our grandchildren to grow up in. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Alby.
There's an opportunity for Dr Cresswell if he wants to change professions into politics. Sure. Fantastic, Chris. Awesome, mate. Look forward to having a beer with you afterwards. Okay, folks, I'd like to introduce our next guest speaker. And our next guest speaker is the leader of a political party. A political party that was quite strong up in Northland many years ago. He's been a strong opponent of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and his crew have been out there in Whangarei holding meetings over many years on the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Please welcome from the Social Democrats, Chris Leitch. Come forward, Chris, please.
Thank you very much, Alby. And one of the things that one finds when you are the speaker on the end of a list of eminent speakers is that most of the things that you were going to say in your speech have already been said by somebody else. Now, having said that, however, there are some things that are worth saying again. But before I start, I just want to say this, that those of us who are involved in politics, particularly those who are MPs, are expected to stick their head above the parapet and be heard and be a little bit controversial about some of these topics. I just want to congratulate Dr Cresswell, because he, out of most of the people who have stood up on the TPPA, has taken an enormous risk under contract to a health board. And facing censure for this kind of action, it is an incredibly courageous stand. So my congratulations to you. As you've heard, the TPPA has 30 separate chapters and 6,000 pages of writing, plus numerous side letters and legal interpretations, the majority of which have nothing to do with free trade at all. I mean, after all, why would you need 6,000 pages of close typing to negotiate a trade agreement? And we should have been aware of this a very long time ago, because if one looks on the website of the US Trade Representative, which is the body that negotiates these kind of agreements for the United States, they listed some years ago, months ago, the list of things that they wanted to achieve out of this TPPA negotiation. Some of them were the obvious things that you expect to do with trade. But then there were a list of these other things, like comprehensive market access by eliminating barriers to investment, regulatory coherence, making things between countries more seamless and efficient, promoting economic integration, comprehensive and robust market liberalisation, And lastly, improvements in investment enhancing disciplines. What have any of those got to do with trade between countries? So we keep hearing, and some of us are guilty of it, of talking about this as a trade agreement. In fact, a free trade agreement, when in fact it's nothing about that at all. It is an agreement that revolves around aligning laws. So there are similar laws for investment, for conservation, for tax, for environmental regulation and so forth, largely designed to benefit international corporations. It's not just about trade, it's actually about freeing up the international movement of money, of foreign investment and capital flows designed, in the main, to benefit money market manipulators and currency speculators. And thirdly, it's about light-handed regulation, like letting the finance industry regulate itself, which incidentally we're experts here on in this country, and which caused the finance company collapses in 2008 and 2009 and saw thousands of older New Zealanders lose their life savings. So is it ordinary New Zealanders who are going to benefit most from these kind of changes, or is it the multinational corporations, foreign investors and currency speculators? Well, let me go to former Canadian Deputy Prime Minister Paul Hellyer. He wrote a book called Stop Think, which I'm going to quote from. What he has to say is this: what is involved is the biggest power, wealth and land grab in the history of the world. The benefits do not accrue exclusively to any one country, but it is the wealthiest power elites of the largest industrialised countries who are the principal beneficiaries. The middle class and the poor of all countries are the losers. He goes on, the process begins with a trade in goods, followed by a freer flow of services, including financial services, all leading to the ultimate prize: unlimited access to other people's land, other people's resources, their factories and financial institutions. And he finishes, of course, the power of nation-states to protect their citizens and the interests of their citizens must be curbed. And that's exactly what we're seeing with the TPPA. We've already heard that medicines will be dearer and that pharmaceutical companies will gain more influence over Pharmac. Of course, the PM said that medicines won't cost users anymore, that the government will pay any extra costs. Well, where in the world does he think the government gets its money to pay those extra costs? Out of our pockets. Capital controls, we know, are going to be effectively done away with under the TPPA. In New Zealand, the New Zealand dollar is already the 10th most traded currency in the world, at approximately $10 billion per day. Now, if we do away with capital controls, we have a problem, because we are funded in this country by high levels of foreign debt. The government has borrowed $90 billion, which incidentally we pay $12 million a day in interest on. And if we faced a financial crisis, we could not stop foreign capital taking flight and wreaking havoc on our economy if we are part of the TPPA. Now let me just briefly address this matter of the ISDS Disputes Tribunal settlement, because this gives foreign companies extra special rights that are not available to domestic companies, because they can apply to the secret overseas tribunal of highly paid corporate lawyers whenever a government passes a law that they deem to have seriously undermined the value of their investments and might contribute not just to a loss of profits, but to a potential loss of profits. In 2012, 59 cases were lodged. Last year, 56 were. That meant there was over $13 billion of pending trade pact attacks on domestic environmental, public health and transportation policy, which, if successful, will come out of the pockets of the taxpayers in those various countries. And then, just a fortnight ago, as Dr Cresswell said, TransCanada announced it was suing the US government for $15 billion. Well, that, if it's successful, will come out of the pockets of American taxpayers. But if, as the Prime Minister says, there's been no ISD case taken against governments, then how come the ISDS process has become a major growth industry for a number of specialised legal firms, who are at the moment riding a gravy train of disputes? And to top it all off, investors are now funding the costs of mounting these cases for a share of the settlement awards. In fact, it's a massive transfer of wealth out of taxpayers' pockets and into corporate profits. So what if we don't join? Well, we already have trade agreements with 6 of the 11 TPP countries, as well as a host of others, including Taiwan, Philippines, Indonesia, Cambodia, China, Hong Kong, Thailand, Bahrain, etc., etc. If we moved our economy towards a more self-reliant rather than importing status, and away from such a heavy reliance on dairying, towards developing our own clean, green, non-GMO food supplies, we would not significantly be affected by being out of the TPPA. And the benefits are not that great anyway. If you read the article in the Herald a couple of days ago by Tim Hazeldine, who's the Professor of Economics at Auckland University Business School, he claims the benefits from tariff cuts under the TPPA will amount to a mere $40 a year for every New Zealander. What a marvellous windfall. Which, of course, will be wiped off in a flash if there's a change in the value of the New Zealand dollar. In conclusion, let me quote from 2 other people who are far more eminent and know much more about these things than I do. American economist Robert Reich, who was on President Obama's Transition Advisory Board, who says, "The TPP is a Trojan horse in a global race to the bottom, giving big corporations and Wall Street banks a way to eliminate any and all laws and regulations that get in the way of them making profits." And finally, Professor Jeffrey Sachs, who's a Professor of Sustainable Development at Columbia's School of International and Public Affairs. He's an advisor to the United Nations, and he was named as Time Magazine's 100 Most Influential People, or one of, in 2004 and 2005. He has come out denouncing the TPPA, saying these proposed agreements are mostly investor protection agreements. Investor protection of property rights of investors, of prerogatives of investors, of intellectual property of investors, and of the regulatory environment of investors. We defeated in the 90s the multilateral agreement on investment, and ladies and gentlemen, we have the power to defeat the TPPA. Thank you very much.